Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGamingTech.com video, we're going to be further discussing Microsoft's recent announcements concerning the Xbox One. Namely, that you will no longer need an internet connection, you no longer need to check in every 24 hours, and the fact that it's now going to be purely disk-based. So, obviously this was an absolute huge announcement, and a massive turnabout. In fact, the internet is already calling it the Xbox 180. So, I've had a reasonable amount of time now to digest the information, and there are a series of points that this is raised concerning this whole situation. What do I mean? Well, remember how Microsoft were talking extensively about the power of the cloud and the power of always-on connection, and to be fair to Microsoft, there were some benefits to it. Obviously, cloud-based gaming in terms of computational power, I was somewhat uncertain of. However, regardless of that, it did have some uses. There are some other examples as well that we're going to be talking about during this video. So, this brings about many different thoughts. Now, people have already been asking me multiple questions. One of the questions they've been asking is what's going to happen with the cloud, and I want to get into that later because I have a feeling that's going to be quite a discussion. The other one, the other major question is, why did they do it? And of course they kept on saying it was the vocal minority rather than the major majority. But as I was saying in yesterday's video, it just wasn't looking good for them as a company, to be honest. I don't know if it was just us as customers. That's the thing. I'd like to say it was us as customers, but most likely it was a combination of many different things. It was likely their investors, their board members and so forth, looking at the bottom line. It was likely their share prices getting battered over multiple instances. It was like the fact that polls were showing the PlayStation 4 mostly ahead. It was the fact that even Nintendo were showing quite a lot of resurgence. Even games developers themselves were completely split on this, which isn't a good way to go in. The Witcher developers were begrudging because they have a really staunch view on DRM. They do not like it. They do not like DRM, and they said that they would develop for the Xbox because they didn't want to punish those who bought the Xbox, but they didn't like developing for the Xbox. And that's not a good way to start, is basically what it comes down to. Now, I'm not going to say that I and or YouTube channels and or the media are also completely and utterly to blame for their reversal of decision, but obviously our constant coverage of it, it's one of those things where they just, as I said previously, they couldn't catch a break. It was a situation where people, I don't know, people really jumped on this used game thing. And I don't think I've ever seen the internet so divisive so quickly, because everyone I know who is even slightly into gaming, and I do mean slightly, had an opinion on this thing. It's not like it was like, do you like the 3DS, just for example, or do you like, I don't know, The Last of Us, right? Where some people said, I haven't played it, or it's alright, or yeah, it was really good. Everyone weighed in on this thing, and it's not good to find yourself at that focal point of attention. They do say that there's no such thing as bad publicity. I would disagree, is actually what it comes down to, because when the age of social media right now, it is not like you are a film star, or something like that. You are basically trying to hawk your product onto different people. So I think the reasons are multiple, and I think they're fairly obvious, so I'm not going to really speak too much about them. No doubt they'll become more apparent. Microsoft are saying that they're very happy with us, that, we've told them their views, but come on now. Reality of the matter is, I don't think they, for the most part, believed that anyone really wanted this. There were some that weren't bothered about it, and there you go. Now, speaking of this, I've actually gotten a bit of stick myself in that people have accused me of being somewhat, I don't know the word I could use, but biased, ragging on Microsoft, bitch slapping them, whatever. And that's really actually inaccurate. I'll be the first to admit I didn't like the 24-hour check-in. I've been really, really honest about that. However, I've also been really honest about the used game thing. I don't like it. I just don't. But here's the problem I've had all along. You look at the price of Xbox One games, right? And then you look at the price of Steam games. That's the reason I've never had a problem with used games being blocked on Steam. Because typically, they are cheaper. Now, why is it that a retail copy costs the same as a digital game, right? That's always been one of the questions that a lot of people have asked me. Why is that? You know, Paul/Crimson Rain, why is that? And it's not really a singular answer because it depends on what you're going for. But the main primary reason is because when it comes to consoles, the retail market, that would be when you walk into a store, whether it be GameStop or whether it be Game in the UK or whatever you're going into, they basically are who are selling the majority of different copies of your hardware. Therefore, you cannot undercut them digitally because you will piss them off. There are other reasons as well, yeah, but this is primarily the main reason. And it basically means that Microsoft right now simply cannot afford to annoy them. I wouldn't be surprised if GameStop themselves were getting a little bit upset over this. There are differences of opinion on how GameStop were going to take the used game situation. Because, let's face it, they were most likely going to be one of the partners where you could trade games in. But I digress. It's a really tricky situation to call because obviously you do not know what goes on behind closed doors. I can speculate until the cows come home, but speculation does not equal the right answer, as I'm sure many of you guys will be aware. But I want to talk about some of the things that I am disappointed in because of this. Now, I will grant you that in one respect I was giddy with glee, if you will, about the Xbox One, because if nothing else, it saves the system constantly getting punched in the face in the media. However, it also means that there are some negatives involved, yeah? In other words, you can't get something, there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you want the used game being able to be traded via disc, there has to be a trade-off, right? You can't just have something and that's it. And in this case, it was the fact that you can no longer gift games for friends over the cloud. You can no longer put people on family trading, that type of thing. So, in other words, the family circle and so forth, as far as I understand it from what I've read, it's gone. It's no longer there. It is nuked. And that, to me, is really disappointing. I'll be honest, and this is from my personal circumstances, and by my personal circumstances I mean how I game with the people that I know and my personal financial situation, as in where I live and so forth. I would absolutely have been fine if they said to us, we have disabled the every 24-hour activation. It will, you cannot use used games unless the publishers agree to it. However, family trading remains intact. You can play games off the disc and whatever else if you so wish, right? And basically there was a mixture of polishes. I think that would have been really cool because, as I said previously, I really, really liked the fact that I could buy a game, I could lend it to you, and I could at the same time have access to a game that was in your library, because imagine how many games you could have had access to. Microsoft were getting a lot of stick on the used game front, and because people, the reason basically this comes down to is, how do you view the games you play, right? People get upset because they view the games that they own as their property. It is black and white. If you walk into a store right now and you buy a TV, right, if you plonk down, 300, 400, 500 for the TV, and you walk home, you drive home, you've got the TV in your living room, that is your TV. It is that simple. if you buy a gold, if you buy a diamond ring for your other half, that is his or her diamond ring. It's that simple. The thing is, people view games, or have viewed games, on console as that. They've viewed them as a collection, as I can pass this down to my, next of kin, or I can keep this for 30 years if I wish. I can trade it, I can lend it, I can collect it, I can sell it. This is particularly true for really rare games. For example, Panzer Dragoon Saga and the Sega Saturn, which was limited in release. So in that respect, people were viewing the games as property, as something that it is mine. On the other hand, other people just rightly said, or not rightly, because as I said, it's down to opinion, other people just said, I don't care. I just want to play the game. As long as Microsoft give me a guarantee that they won't be assholes over it and they won't just shut down my game, well, I don't care. As long as I've bought the game, I've played the game, that's all that matters to me. End of. Bottom line. And then I suppose you have to take into account other factors, such as how you feel about used games. As I said, personally, I don't like them. However, personally, what I like does not mean jot to you. Right? To you, you might like saving $5 or £5 or £10 or whatever you can save when you trade in a game. You might like that. It might mean that you are one of those people that will never replay that game again, therefore it means absolutely nothing to you to have that game in your collection. And more power to you. I'm not trying to tell you how to play your games. That's perfectly down to you. That is down to you and you alone. However, as I said, the loss of the family circle / being able to play games that you have allocated to different people is, in my opinion, pretty sad. I really like that. And that is not just me saying it. I honestly did really like that feature. I personally would have preferred that feature to have stayed and then not to reverse the decision so much, because I think the cloud-based nature, or shall I say the connected-based nature, would have been really cool on the console. Next, this brings me to another issue I have with this. The cloud. Right, now, we know that the cloud is going to be used for certain computational tasks, in theory, for next generation games, such as Forza for, say, the AI. Problem. If you're a games developer, right? Imagine you are a games developer, you want to develop a game for the Xbox One. What do? Do you A, not make use of the cloud? B, do you make use of the cloud? Now, if you go with A or B, you're going to annoy someone. If you make use of the cloud, is it going to be mandatory? If it's going to be mandatory, that means certain people cannot play your games. Therefore, you'll need an internet connection. Therefore, you're going to have sticky situations where people just say, well, it's an internet connection. I didn't realize I needed an internet connection. How does the trade-in works on that? It's a bit of a nightmare. On the other hand, you could always have another person that says, well, gee, I don't want cloud-based gaming. The problem is when you're disabling the cloud, the Xbox One is less powerful than the PS4, A, and B, the cloud does allow some pretty cool tasks. Now, a lot of people are citing Forza 5. I'll be honest, I think that's one of the absolute worst possible, scenarios, because I don't want to race against AI facsimiles against my friends. If my friend Steven has somehow had a rough pattern of how he drives on the cloud, I don't give a crap about playing against AI Steven. I want to play against Steven. Not because of his skill level. Sure, if he's as good as me, or roughly in my league, that's better because it gives good competition. But the reason I want to play against him, as I've said in another video, is because he's my friend and I enjoy his company, and beating him or racing around a track at high speeds and, ramming him off the track at terminal velocity and watching him careen into a wall is a happy, fun time for me. Now, I realise I may be in the minority here, but in that respect, I don't really give a crap about the cloud. However, for certain things, I do give a crap about the cloud in. For example, imagine a living, persisting world of Grand Theft Auto. Could you imagine how awesome that would be? Could you imagine, for example, a living persistent world of, say, Elder Scrolls 6, whatever the hell that's going to be called, whenever the hell that will be released, or the next Fallout? All of these games could be really awesome, because much like World of Warcraft, sort of World of Warcraft, because let's say that you log on World of Warcraft, right now, assuming you've got an account, but it's the same pretty much MMO, any MMO. Most of the stuff doesn't really change. That guard, the guard you will see there is always going to be the guard you see there. He doesn't age, he doesn't change, he doesn't get better armor, his level cap doesn't go up unless there's an expansion, that type of thing. However, in theory, with a game like Persistent World, Skyrim, just for example, could you imagine a world where the characters around you become stronger or more leveled up? Now, that there are issues with that. For example, what happens if you don't play the game for a year? Right? So, obviously, there has to be some level of sense there, because let's say you don't play the game for, a year. Let's say you've just lost interest in it or whatever, and you've just been like, It's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you. You just haven't played a game for 6 months because life has gotten in the way, other games have happened, you just got bored with it, you got frustrated, you got really far through, and you're doing side quests, you're just like, I'll leave the rest for a while. So what happens then in the persistent world? Because, let's say the big bad's coming, what happens, when you log back into the world, you're standing in a pool of fire and everything's, disintegrated. So obviously the developers would have to figure this stuff out themselves. Even so. Now Microsoft are quite rightly saying that you have to be connected to the internet to enjoy those experiences. It's that simple. And they've also said that, of course, developers and publishers will have to choose. And I say developers and publishers because publishers ultimately will make some decisions for the developers based upon time constraints and so forth, since sometimes they are financially bankrolling the game. Do we go the route of the cloud? Now, obviously, they are free to do yes or no. For example, it could go Diablo style, where a server is used even if you choose to play single player. Personally, I hate that crap. One of the reasons I like Torchlight 2 is because I can play solo and not on a server. However, to be fair, I probably should play on a server, if only because a couple of friends I know do have it. But even so, I don't have to if I choose not to. And Blizzard did get some battering because of the whole server requirement thing. Obviously, that's their form of DRM, although they're not really being honest about that. But that is primarily the reason for it, I imagine. So it's a really tricky question. That's really what it comes down to. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this respect. Microsoft are definitely going to get some of their audience back. The problem is, most people are questioning already why they're doing it, and they know, that it's not strictly because they want to please their fans. It's because they know they're getting absolutely decimated in the polls. And that isn't ragging on Microsoft. That's not being harsh to Microsoft. If it was Sony, I'd say exactly the same sodding thing. It's a simple case of the numbers just don't lie. You could be a Sony fan, you could be a Microsoft fan, you could be a Nintendo fan, you can hate gaming, you can love gaming. It's irrelevant. The numbers were clear. And obviously it wasn't just one source. It was on several. Just on orders on Amazon, on orders on various different websites, on polls on different gaming websites. It was clear that Microsoft were getting stomped on. Therefore, they had to do something about it. They can say that it was the vocal minority, but the reality is they tried to weather the storm. And as I said yesterday, the thing is they expected Sony most likely to do similar, right? Because let's say they went in and they said, okay, DRM. And then they were just waiting for Sony to say, actually, guys, we're going to have to do DRM as well because, our rivals are doing it and our publishers are saying it's probably a good idea. So Microsoft were expecting that, but then they didn't. So you're basically standing alone in this torrent of shit that is swirling upon you, and you are the only target for that torrent because your competitor didn't take that route. As I said earlier, it's not like Sony did anything particularly astounding there. They literally just kept their policy as was. And from what I understand, and this is not confirmed, but Sony themselves were unsure what their policies were going to be until the last minute. In other words, they had not fully thought out their policies like 3 months or 6 months before. Instead, they were trying to finalise them and figure out, okay, where do we go with this? But then they just saw that the rumour mill on the Xbox One, even before launch, wasn't going favourably, and they just thought, you know what we're going to do? We're going to see. We're not going to announce anything. I would if I was Sony. It just doesn't make sense to. If you could get an edge on your competitor, because now they've got the goodwill gesture, right? Even people who were on the fence before and now are thinking, well, at least it doesn't have DRM, they're still going to be thinking, oh, you know what, those guys tried to screw me over before. Because some people do think like that. I mean, I've heard everything from, they hate the consumers and they just treat them like, cash cows, all the way down to they're doing what I think is fair business practices. That's what the difference of opinion. This is how polarizing this has been. So obviously, the people who have hated them because of the whole DRM fiasco, you're likely not going to change their mind unless you're going to give them something really astounding. So anyway, it's a really, really tricky one. I'm actually unsure how I feel about the loss of the cloud in terms of that. The problem is now, what difference is there between the Xbox One and the Xbox 360? And you're going to yell at me, well, it's faster. It has the Kinect built in. Who cares? Right? The Xbox One should be fast at Xbox 360. In my opinion, it's not bloody well fast enough. I don't think the PS4 is fast enough either. To be really honest, I personally think it should have been over 2 T-flops of computing power. Right? That's just not my opinion. A couple of developers have said the same thing, including Epic, by the way. You compare it to the GPU power of modern PCs, and it's like, even the PS4 is like half the computing power. So you can imagine what the Xbox One is, right? So I wanted more GPU power in both consoles, but especially the Xbox One, just because I don't believe it's got enough in it. So the loss of the cloud bothers me in that respect. So I don't really know exactly what Microsoft are going to be doing, so therefore it has to be down upon the games. It has to be a game-focused situation for Microsoft. They have to just show a really kick-ass selection of games. But, fortunately for Microsoft, they can do this. They have what is in the industry known as an incentive. It's called money. They can easily buy in the raw talent. If they stopped pissing off indie developers as well, that'd probably help us a smidgen as well. But Microsoft are back on the right track, which is fantastic, because I do not want Sony to just win this war. I don't care who wins the war. I don't care if Sony does win. I don't care if Microsoft wins, and I use the quotation marks there. But I don't care if Nintendo win, for that matter. I just want a quite tight console battle, because it's better for the consumer. And that is the thing. And I'm not even saying for consumer rights. Yeah? That's not even the angle I'm coming from, although that is one of the angles, but it's also for the games, right? Because, let's face it, what's the point in buying a console or a games playing machine in general, so whether that's even a tablet, if you're into tablet gaming, a PC or whatever, if there are no games for it? Yeah, if you've just bought this thing and the only thing that you're doing is maybe playing 1 or 2 games here and there and staring at the start screen, it's pointless. You might as well have just got that money, thrown it down the drain, or burned it, or peed on it, in front of someone. It's pointless money. It is a waste of money. Therefore, what really is going to sell it to anyone right now are the games. And Microsoft obviously have a lot of money invested into exclusives. Obviously, they've got titles like Titanfall, and that's good. That's really good. It's arguable right now who has the better games lineup on their system, which is good. When it's arguable, like when the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360 were being announced, it was really like anyone's race. No one knew who was going to have the better system. As it turned out, both machines have been extremely even. No one can say that the Xbox 360 dominated or the PS3 dominated. Sure, in Japan, for example, the PS3 stomped over the Xbox. But overall, sales figures, one has not been the decisive winner. And more to the point, if you had bought only the Xbox 360 or you had bought only the PlayStation 3, you would not have said that that was a bad decision. Because the games on both machines were pretty damn awesome. Sure, one or two had a few sticky ports here and there, but the actual games in terms of overall, you're not doing too badly on. So, anyway, this has been a bit of an interesting couple of days, to say the least. I'm happy Microsoft have reversed their policy. Anyway, I think that just about does it for this particular video, so I want to know what you guys think of this. People are really on the fence with this whole situation. Obviously, the polls are changing a little bit more into the Xbox's favour. They couldn't have really gone worse from the Xbox's favour, to be honest with you, if they tried, but they're starting to tip a little bit, which is good. More to the point as well, I want to know what you guys think about the whole cloud gaming issue. What you think of the always online requirement. Are you actually going to care about the change at all? Like, does it even affect you? For example, some people may not have bought the system, the Xbox One, simply because there were just no games that were interesting to them. For example, you might have looked at Killzone and you might have looked at Infamous and you said, okay, that's for me. Or you might be a Nintendo gamer and you might have looked at both systems and you said, not for me. On the other hand, you could have already been a massive Microsoft fan, or you could have liked the look of the Xbox reveal after all, and you could have said, okay, well, these changes, I don't know about them. That's one of the reasons that I like the console, to be honest. I like the ability to share with my friends and so on. And so a lot of that really awesome flexibility, that's the bottom line. Some of the flexibility has been removed in some respects, but we have others. So do you more prefer the traditional flexibility, or do you prefer this type of flexibility? It's really difficult. We are definitely in a transitionary period, my friends. We really are. Anyway, leave your comments below, as I would say. You can also jump over to Facebook. That would be facebook.com/redgamingtech. So that would be facebook.com/redgamingtech. Or you can check out the description if you want to be a bit lazy, and it would be right there. And you can go ahead and you can comment right there, and you can let us all know what your opinions are. Anyway, I think that's just about it for this particular video. I'm going to get going. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, even though it's been a bit of a rambly, ranty one. So I will see you soon. Take care, and bye for now.